then charging becomes a barrier. 80% of people who have electric cars charge them up at home. That's great for those 80%. Now you get out into the real world, and I think what manufacturers and charging companies have failed to see is that you need 5 times as many charging stations as you do gasoline stations.
Welcome back to Car-Pinionated, our weekly show on cars, the car industry, and driving in general. I'm Doug Stewart, digital executive producer for Fox 61 in Hartford. And we're joined again by Brian Moody, who is the executive editor for Kelley Blue Book. Brian, welcome back. We're going to talk about EVs today and EV
Sure.
sales over the past year. What are you seeing?
Well, we're seeing Tesla still dominate in terms of specific models like the Model 3 and the Model Y. And I think that even though this is the great thing is that like Tesla makes up more than 40% of overall EV sales, yet their sales numbers last year kind of slipped a little bit. So if you can imagine being in the position of like your sales going down, yet you still command a 40% market share, that's a pretty good position to be in. It's specifically, like I said, those two cars, the Model Y and the Model 3. I think that shows that that's the kind of electric car that people are after, right? That size, that maybe a little bit lower than that price, and that type of range, that type of performance.
Do you, do you think there's still a perception when I talk to some people, they're like, oh, other people make electric cars besides Tesla?
Yes, yes, because they don't spend as much money, the other automakers don't spend as much money or time promoting them. Now, Tesla didn't really have to do any TV commercials. In fact, this year in Los Angeles, I went to the auto show, and for the first, maybe second time in 10 years, there was a Tesla display. They don't usually do that kind of stuff. Their advertising is word of mouth. And it turns out that's actually kind of powerful because we did a survey asking people, how do you decide what your next car is going to be? Many of them said by just looking on the street or asking my neighbor. So when you already have a bunch, people are going to tend to, look at that and say, hey, maybe I'll get one of those. That being said, there are several. Hyundai is a great example. Kia is a great example of really good electric cars that aren't Teslas.
Mhm. And so other automakers are making gains. I mean, it looks like
Sure.
GM had a really good year
Yeah.
last year.
Yeah.
Ford did as well.
Yeah.
And GM, I think, has more electric models than Ford does. So Ford is basically the Mach-E and the Lightning, right?
Lightning. Yeah.
Um, and what do you think that those manufacturers are doing and doing right?
I think it's packaging and I think it's price. I think those two things together. If you look at like we almost have to look at Tesla as a benchmark, right? So there were electric cars before Tesla, but Tesla came along and packaged it in a certain way and said, what if it was fast? What if it was sexy? What if it was luxury? People went crazy for that. Then same thing with the Model 3 and the Model Y. What if they were a little bit smaller and a little bit more affordable? Again, they become the top selling things. So rather than these big $100,000, 1,000 horsepower Hummer type electric vehicles, GM has said, mainly through Chevrolet, hey, vehicles like the Blazer and the Equinox, which have a lot of usefulness, right? It's a small SUV, pretty smart that they put their EVs, not their only EVs, but put an EV in the most popular category in the US. So people are going to gravitate toward that. I think what they did is made the right kind of car for the people who are looking for that kind of car. It turns out if you answer a question people are asking, you'll sell stuff. The other way doesn't work. We can talk about how much we would love to see a 2,000 horsepower and maybe a flying car and all that. That's not what people want. They want basically a Honda CRV, and sometimes they want it to be electric, and sometimes they want it to be a hybrid.
Because that's where the market is big in the big
Right,
picture. Those are the cars
right.
that are selling. That's what people go into the showroom are looking for.
Yes,
And
yes.
I think that's we've always been this way. I'm like, I think there was a strong feeling of like, we want this X car that does performance and it'll be
Yeah.
all-wheel drive and have a turbocharger in it. And then when somebody brings that out, it doesn't sell. I
Yes.
feel like
Well,
that's what,
yeah.
what the customer has wanted and what they'll buy are kind of really disparate things.
I feel like the car buyers have always wanted the same thing, and that is basically an Oldsmobile station wagon. Now, when those went away, right? Because remember, Oldsmobile and Buick were like the top selling
Oh,
models for many years.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so then when those went away, then people said, well, okay, well, what's the next closest thing? Chevy Tahoe. All right, I'll take a bunch of those.
Mhm.
And then that gets bigger and more expensive. And then what comes along? Toyota RAV4, Honda CRV, Mazda CX-50, right? And that's what people are. If you look at those cars, if you look at a BMW X2 or X1 or something on the road, or you look at some of those cars, reduce the height and you basically have a station wagon, right? Long nose, long roof, open cargo area. I think that's what people have always wanted. And when automakers don't offer the thing that they want, they'll find another way to get it.
I think there's a need to return to the Vista Cruises skylight in those cars.
Right? Wouldn't that be cool?
Anyway,
I
uh,
know.
um, so one of the things that I've noticed in the past week or so is that there's a conglomeration of automakers who are committing to building charging stations.
Yeah.
Iona, I think is how you pronounce it.
Uh-huh. The
What do
charging company.
right?
Yeah.
What do you think that what do you see that happen? Do you see that happening? Do you see that changing the, kind of varied Electrify America and ChargePoint
Yeah.
and all these others that are kind of don't have the greatest reputation?
Well, I think that charging is a big barrier for a lot of people. I think ignorance is another barrier. I think if the average person, take away the politics and all that, if the average person just got into an electric car, like say a Kia EV6, let's just say as an example,
Okay.
I think they'd like it. I
Yeah.
think most people would like the fact that it's quiet, that it's quick, that it's easy to use. One of the things my wife commented on was that in electric cars, she likes the shifter that's easy to manipulate. The having the big lever, yeah, if you're an enthusiast, you probably don't want like a Porsche that's quiet and easy to, you want some feedback, you want some noise, but that's not where most people are.
Mhm.
So I think that's the case, that most people would like it, but then charging becomes a barrier. 80% of people who have electric cars charge them up at home. That's great for those 80%. Now you get out into the real world, and I think what manufacturers and charging companies have failed to see is that you need 5 times as many charging stations as you do gasoline stations. Right now, if you go to the gas station and there's 2 cars ahead of you, you'll probably wait, because that's only
Sure.
going to be a 10-minute, at the most, that's a 10-minute wait. So if you go to an electric charging station, there's 2 cars or even 1 car ahead of you, you might be on the hook for an hour now. And
Mhm.
I just don't think people are looking to add that kind of complexity to their day. They're looking to do things quicker, not slower. So the answer is more of those charging stations. Because it's not quick and in and out like a gas station is, you need more. And I think then people will do it. As an example, Mercedes-Benz has a great charging system. You prepay, you go, as soon as you plug your car in, it reads it, it knows the car, it knows the account, boom, starts charging right away. And you might be there for 20 minutes if you don't get, a full charge or whatever. And that works out fine. Fumbling with your phone and the cards and all that, people don't want that. Mercedes-Benz has a way to do it. Other manufacturers do too. I think when you put ease into the charging infrastructure, plus an overabundance of stations, that's going to be the key.
Right. And that's I think that's the crown jewel of the Tesla operation
Right,
is their
right,
charging system and how
right.
reliable it is and how accessible it is,
How prevalent they are.
Right, because I can think
Yeah,
of like, 3 places right around here within a short distance you know, that will do it, right? And
yeah.
so I don't know if you can answer this, but I've seen numbers about how Tesla sales outside the country are dropping. Um,
Hmm.
and do you is that something that's a leading indicator for the US, or is that something that is endemic to those countries, or how do you see that?
I think it's both. I think Tesla sales are dropping outside the US, but they are also dropping inside the US. And one of the things that Tesla had for a long time was kind of a corner on the market, right? They have this great charging system. And I have to admit, I didn't think that was worth much in the beginning, but now I see that is maybe everything for some people that they don't care about. Like, listen, if you were really cared about cars, you wouldn't have a car where everything, even the turn signal indicator, goes through one big central screen.
Ah,
That's not
yeah,
a fun experience.
right,
You
right.
know, so the fact that more cars are coming online is just competition for Tesla. It's kind of like the Walkman, right? Like if you were alive in like the 80s and someone told you about the iPod or the iPhone and said, "Who's going to make this?" You would probably have said Sony because
Hmm.
they look at where they already are. Many times with consumer products, one great thing opens the door and everybody else comes in, and then the best filter its way to the top.
Right.
Tesla may have been first, but they're not necessarily going to be that way forever. Hyundai makes great electric cars.
Hmm. I also found it interesting that, and we talked about this on our show a couple weeks ago, that more uh, Mach-E's, Mustang Mach-E's were sold last year than the internal combustion engine one.
Mm,
I find that interesting,
yeah.
and just I'm sure there's a lot of market reasons, and
Hmm.
for more people, the Mach-E is a more practical car than
Yes.
obviously than a two-door coupe, and the market that they're marketing the two-door coupe, it's a lot of factors there, but what do you
Yeah.
think about that? What do you think about the fact that the Mach-E is outselling
The traditional
yeah,
Mustang.
yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a couple of things. I think first, toward the end of 2024, electric vehicles were heavily incentivized. A lot of people saw that as like a barrier. Again, even though electric car prices are up slightly, almost 1%, but that's not that much. When you add incentives on top of that, you have people reconsidering, right? That's what happened when Tesla lowered their prices. People
Hmm.
then their sales went up. I think what's happening with that is that the driving population generally cares less about cars today than they did in the past. And that's why you see a lot of disappearing of most two-door type of cars, right?
Hmm.
Remember, there was a time in this
Yeah.
country when Toyota said, We need a Camry coupe."
Hmm.
That was a thing that they made. Well, now when you look at what are the things that have gone away? Two-door SUVs. The Bronco left and then
Hmm.
came back. The Blazer left and then came back. The Wrangler, hats off to Jeep, never left because they stuck to their guns. But now the four-door model far outsells the two-door model.
Hmm.
Same with I have a suspicion that if you were to make a Mustang SUV and it had a V6 engine or an EcoBoost or something, and it was four-door, it probably would also outsell the Mustang Coupe. Those
Yeah.
types of cars, they're still high. We see the sales numbers or the at least people doing research on our sites. The Corvette and Mustang and Camaro, those relatively stay high, but those are like the only types of
Right.
two-door coupes that really, it's you don't see Lexus with a lot of coupes anymore. You don't
No.
see, and so there's a reason people are more practical today than they used to be. Yesterday, I think they used to be more into driving. Today, it's more about I just need to get the job done.
And I think also the uh, the the price went higher. And so where somebody who was first entering the market, they might buy, there was the Geostorm,
Hmm.
that whole
Hmm.
class of coupes existed
Yeah.
and was sort of the entry level car. And then people
Yeah.
went up from there. And then
Yeah.
when those started to go away, then, those, I mean, the Mustang appeals to an older crowd,
Yeah.
the internal combustion engine that has an appeal that is different from what the Mustang appeal was 15, 20, 30 years ago,
Yeah.
certainly,
Yeah.
throughout its
Yeah.
history, when most of them were six-cylinder engines, right? And
Yes.
just
Yes.
cheap and looked great. Um,
Yeah.
the other thing I wanted to talk about was who, wh where do you see Stellantis in all this? Um, they were working on the airflow. They've kind of dropped that. They
Hmm.
had the Halcyon, which I don't think is the practical vehicle, but that's just me.
Right.
Um, it looks like there's a lot of incentives on the new Dodge Charger, and they're getting a lot of pushback. I don't necessarily think it's deserved on that car,
Yeah.
but whatever.
Yeah.
Where do you think that they're going to be able to go forward?
I think they can go forward. I think they need to refigure their lineup and also their pricing strategy. My opinion is that Stellantis products, specifically Jeep, priced a lot of people out of the market and
Mhm.
forced them into looking for used Jeeps when what they really wanted was a more base model or a more off-roady type model. If any group of people wants something that's a little bit more basic, it's Jeep Wrangler purchasers or Jeep purchasers. I
Mhm.
mean, why are you looking at Jeep in the first place? You're not looking at Jeep because what you really want is a Lexus, but you want a Jeep badge on it. I think they price their customers out of the market. And I do think that when when you hang your hat on a performance attribute, and then you kill those cars that you've spent all this time and money. And again, I would say that the Chargers and Challengers were like the Teslas of the combustion engine world. You didn't hardly have to do any advertising. People
Yeah.
just point and what's that? Oh my gosh, look at that one. You know, music videos and all that kind of stuff. Just the thing like sells itself. And then you take that away and say, here's our new electric charger. I think the new charger looks really cool. I think
Mhm.
it's great looking.
Mhm.
Now, what probably should have happened was combustion and electric should have come out together.
Mhm.
But, you know, these things change. We see Porsche now saying, hey, some of our electric cars, our customers have said they might want a combustion engine in it. That's a specialty car, right? So the troubling thing for Dodge is that like are you a specialty brand or are you a mainstream brand? Are you selling, you know, SXT chargers to the masses and then you have one hot one that you sell fewer of? Or are you just a niche brand that like sells these small, few cool things? I don't know the answer, but I think that the pushback on the charger is at the minimum, they gave it cool features. They gave it features that are true to the brand of Dodge.
Mhm.
It does have performance. It's quick. It's all of those things. And I think it's great looking. What the question is how much do people value those customers, that visceral feeling of sound and smell of a combustion engine versus it's just the quickest one? I think that's going to have to be decided. But maybe offering a solution of both. You mentioned Mustang. If you want an electric Mustang, they have that. You want
Yeah,
a gas
I got
powered
both. Yeah.
Mustang?
Yep.
Same with the F-150, right?
Mhm.
Gas, diesel, electric, whatever you want. Maybe that's the solution.
Yeah. And what do you think of Toyota's strategy? I mean, I think a lot of people ding them for not coming out with battery powered, an EV, solely
Yeah,
powered EV, except for the that one um, BZ, uh, whatever, Mitsubishi.
4X. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Um, and and now they're class leading in hybrid, and they're making everything a hybrid.
right.
Do you think that they knew that? I mean, do you think that they actually arrived where they thought they were going to be, or do you think that they
Yes.
accidentally arrived there?
No, I think they're very smart. I think
Okay.
they're smart people running that company. I think they look at the landscape, they talk to their customers. We've done the same thing and we've asked people, what do you think? And many people have said a hybrid works better for me where I am right now.
Hmm.
I think they've made wise choices. And it turns out you really can't sell consumer products based on ideology. You have to have a great thing first. If someone said, hey, there's these sneakers, they aren't as good as Nike and they are more expensive than Nike, but they're made by some really nice people. No, People
Mhm.
want what performs. They want what's in their budget and what does the job today. Toyota saw that and saw the need for, because one of the things we've seen in the survey is that many people today are considering the air quality and the environment in their purchase. So they're noticing that I want to make that kind of a purchase. That doesn't mean electric though. It might
Mhm.
not. And
Yeah.
by giving something like the Prius or the Camry or the Sienna, which are all hybrid, then you give them the choice of this works the way you expect, it uses fewer resources, and it has all those attributes that you've loved about Toyotas for all those years. And by the way, I don't know if people know this or not, but Toyota hybrids now have a 10-year, 150,000-mile warranty on the hybrid and battery components. I mean, what does that say? That
Yeah.
says we know it's good and we
Mhm.
want you to know it too.
Mhm. Great. Anything else you wanted to add on this subject?
Yeah, I think what the good thing about hybrids specifically is that it gives you that boost, that quick performance that you get from an electric car, but it does it without requiring that you charge it up. Plug-in hybrids can be charged up. That's, I think, another area where
Yeah.
consumers really don't understand how they work. But I think that's an opportunity also.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's I think if people stop and think about their driving habits, a plug-in hybrid covers a huge amount of the
Right.
market swath. You know,
Yeah. You're
I know
driving an
for
electric car.
right. I know for me it would work,
Yeah.
and and I don't think it's a I always use my mom as an example, and she's
Yeah.
still driving.
Yeah.
She's 89, but she wants to get in a car that she understands, right? And that
Yes.
she doesn't, have to think, okay, where did they hide the blinkers? Which,
Where did they that
yeah,
should be
right,
that's a headline right there. Where
right,
did they hide the
yeah,
blinkers?
yeah. One of the things that Auto Trader and Kelly Blue Book has developed is an app, and that will tell you the actual health of a car. Tell me more about that.
On Auto Trader listings, okay? Cox developed this thing that now by VIN, not by model, gives you the usable range of an electric car a used electric car. So you can see where it says usable
Uh-huh.
range. Okay.
Okay.
So that's for that car. So you don't have to wonder buying a used electric car, oh, I wonder if this is going to have a good battery or not. And when you click on that, it gives you this, it gives you a battery health rating. It will tell you if the battery is excellent or if it's good or if it's fair.
Okay.
And that I think is one of the few things, because usually when companies come up with stuff, it's like, oh, we have a new enhancement to our wallet. Okay, that's not gonna that's not gonna be a press release on that one there,
Yeah.
buddy.
Yeah.
But this actually is, if you were to go buy a used, whatever that was for an F-150 Lightning, you would want to know, just like with a gas powered car, hey, what's the history
Right.
of it?
Right.
And here you can see this car has excellent battery health, which is going to make the value of it more. You're
Yeah.
going to pay more, but wouldn't you want to pay more? And now the dealer is going to say, oh, I can charge more for this.
Mhm.
So it kind of serves both sides.
Yeah, because a friend of mine bought a Volt like maybe a year and a half ago, maybe more, and
Hmm.
she found that there was no way to test the battery at the
Yeah.
time, and
Yeah.
that just seemed weird. What is the methodology for how you get that data?
So this comes from a lot of, you can see this is this comes from, many of the cars come through Manheim, which Cox owns,
Hmm.
and they have proprietary software that they wrote to go in and read the battery and give it a score. Some of it, if the car doesn't have, like, say, an older, like if it was a really old Model S, or if it was an older Leaf, it would probably be based on model information mainly.
Okay.
But this takes a little bit of model information, but then takes the actual charging history and the current state of the battery
Hmm.
and applies that rating through software. I mean, smart people did it. I didn't do it. Um, but there's a proprietary thing, and that's by VIN. So that's each car. So you could have two
Yeah.
F-150s in the same lot. depending on how they were treated, right? Just like a gas powered car. On the one, grandpa has his notebook where he wrote down every oil change. Well, isn't that car worth more?
Mhm.
Versus the other one where it's like, I don't know how they took care of it. So that's on a gas powered car. Same with an electric car. You want some sort of like, hey, this car has an excellent battery rating. Probably it wasn't fast charged every single day.
Mhm.
That's one of the criteria.
Okay.
How often fast charge, how often discharge, did it go down to zero? It measures all that kind of stuff.
Well, excellent. Thank you again
Yeah.
for your time. Great to always have you. Always great to have you on. And this has been another episode of Car-Pinionated. Um, give us a like and subscribe. We have a YouTube playlist, and we will see you again next week.